let's move on to the colorless deck. This was one between the three of us. This was something that was, and I don't know if still is, could be considered one of the most hype. They've never made a colorless Matters precon before. What do you guys feel about that?
I like it a lot.
I think it's really cool.
I also
even though it
want to
didn't
spend $90, $120 on it.
Right.
So the biggest thing for me is just the cost is most inhibitive. But like, I love a colorless deck.
To be fair,
it's also a little weird that they call it Eldrazi Unbound, and there's like 2 Eldrazi in the deck.
There's like, as far as actual creatures are concerned, there's like 9 or 10 Eldrazi in there. But as far as like good ones, yeah, there's 3.
Right.
But
they couldn't add too much value.
No,
exactly right. But here was the thing: is like we sort of like expected the resale value for a deck like this to be a little bit higher, because a deck like this could be something that could be purchased that all the included pieces that were going to be a part of it could just be multifunction across a variety of decks. Like every deck plays Artifact Ramp. Every deck plays, like some decks play like colorless sources of card draw. You know what I mean? There was going to just inherently be very good built-in pieces that you could take out of this deck and shove them into other pieces just because they were being included in here. Because colorless as a theme is a very restrictive and hard to build around. You kind of are like pulling at scraps to find your best pieces to include in there to not fall behind of the other decks that would have color in them. So
yeah, who wants to read off the commander that they want you to run?
I've wrote
it's pretty simple.
Yeah. So Zul'Dok Void Gorger is the face commander of this deck. He is 5 and a colorless. Some people may not actually know like how that represents here. That colorless symbol that's up in there specifically, since it's been a long time since they had this on cards. That symbol means that you have to cast this card using mana from a source that produces colorless specifically.
Yeah. It's not going to matter in this deck because all of your lands, all of your mana taps for colorless. So functionally, this is just 6 mana.
Correct. But for anybody who would want to try to be placing this into something that isn't colorless, you need to make sure that that mana is coming from a colorless source specifically, which unfortunately does not mean the main cycle of 5 basic lands. Those, like, you'd be able to use that for its generic cost, but you have to have colorless to cast it. And that same will be true for other cards that are in this deck as well. So Zul'Dok is 6 total to cast, one of it being colorless. Colorless spells you cast from your hand. Cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade.
Busted.
Very strong.
A colorless Maelstrom Wanderer.
Correct.
Do you guys know that this card is pre-ordering for like $60 right now?
Oof. Wow.
It is.
I mean, I can see why, right? Like when you're into colorless, you don't have to worry about finding the colors you need. You're just you ramp into big dumb idiots, you get down this guy, and now you just continue to get out more big dumb idiots.
True.
No, Zul'Dok is great. Cascade has always been a very mainstay popular commander mechanic, is getting free value for the stuff that you're casting. Phenomenal. Less exciting is the backup commander, I would say, Omarthis, Ghostfire Initiate. XX, it's all colorless still specifically. Omarthis enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. When you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on another colorless creature, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Omarthis. And when Omarthis dies, manifest a number of cards from the top of your library equal to the number of counters on it.
I think it's so sick.
Talk me into it, because I don't think this card is good.
So you play it for 2 mana. It's a 2 mana 1/1. And then you play other like Eldrazi, like just the X mana Eldrazi that's an XX, or it comes with X counters.
And this one.
Yeah. It's also just whenever you put one or more counters. So if you're playing stuff that like doubles counters or gets more counters, if you're playing anything with modular, like this is an unbelievable modular commander.
You can cast this off of Soul Ring.
Yeah. You turn 1 Soul Ring Amarthis and then go from there. And then when it dies, you make it probably is a 4 or 5, maybe a 6/6. and then you just make 6 2/2s that represent actual cards underneath them. Like it to me, this is actually what I'm way more excited about than Zuladoc.
Yeah.
As a modular fan.
Also, that art is really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I miss Khans of Tarkir.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's from the world of Tarkir. That's that Ghostfire magic is Ugin's whole thing.
One of the best. Speaking of Ugin, I'll talk about Ugin's Mastery. It's the next one.
Do it.
It's a 4-mana enchantment. Whenever you cast a colorless creature spell, manifest the top card of your library. Whenever you attack with creatures with total power 6 or greater, you may turn a face-down creature you control face up. So it's good. Again, I don't love 4+ mana things that don't actually do anything when they come in. But if you can get this going to where you're manifesting, swinging with them, flipping stuff, it does become a lot of value really quickly for you. So that's Ugin's Mastery.
This seems really.
Go ahead.
This seems really funny to pull out of this deck and throw into a morph deck because because it just cares about face down cards.
100%. Yeah, you can ignore the top line of text of casting color. Well, no, because if you morph, you're casting a colorless creature.
So what was the next you wanted to talk about?
Oh, I was going to see who wants the honors of talking about.
I'll talk about it.
Rise of the Eldrazi.
I wanted to do it. Go for it, though.
John, go for it. I have no real. Okay, so it's 9 and then 3 specific colorless. So 12 mana sorcery. The spell can't be countered, thank God, because how bad would that feel?
But it can still be exiled.
It can. Mind Break Traps enter the chat. Is it destroy target permanent? Target player draws 4 cards and then take an extra turn after this one. Exile this card after you do all that. This card is so insane. That's just a lot of stuff.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's just the cast triggers of all 3 of the OG Titans. It's so cool.
Yeah. Also, notably, it combos with Darksteel Monolith that's also in the deck, which is 8 mana for an artifact that's indestructible. Once per turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a colorless spell. So this card becomes 0 mana for an extra turn, draw 4 cards, and destroy something. That's dumb.
That's so
and
silly.
Notably, Darksteel Monolith is 8 mana, so it combos with Zuladoc. It'll trigger your Cascade triggers.
We snowballing.
That's called Synergy.
Love
Synergy,
that.
if I've ever seen it.
Well, that knocks out that new card as well. I'll talk about Skittering Cicada next.
Go for it.
So it's a 3 mana 2/2 insect with flash. You may cast colorless spells as though they had flash. And whenever you cast a colorless spell until end of turn, Skittering Cicada gains trample and +X/+X, where X is that spell's mana value. So it's a little weird that it gives everything flash, but then it also gets boosts and trample from stuff. So you can sort of use that as either a combat trick, or it then gives you extra benefit for casting things on your main phase or during your combat step or something like that.
Listen, our boy is versatile, okay?
He's versatile. Yeah.
The opposite of One Trick Pony.
Yeah. It's the opposite of Battle at the Hell Vault.
I actually love this card a lot.
Me too.
It's just playing your whole deck at instant speed is really powerful.
Yes.
It's powerful enough to convince me to play Leyline of Anticipation in some things that I probably shouldn't play it in.
You shouldn't be playing a Leyline of Anticipation. Just to be clear.
Yeah, so I think it's fun. It keeps everyone on their toes and allows you to do things at the absolute most it'll get you the most valuable possible. Yeah.
Can I talk into one of the cards that has probably the most busted synergies that you could do, or as far as synergies, but like busted triggers that you can do with it?
Please break this card.
Obtruse Archaic. 4 mana for a 3/4 colorless avatar. It has vigilance. And for 1 mana, tap it. Copy target activated or triggered ability you control from a colorless source. You may choose new targets for that copy. It sounds restrictive that like you can't really hit a bunch of activated or triggered abilities from a bunch of sources, but in a colorless deck like this, and the amount of things that count themselves as a colorless source, there is some very nuts synergies and extra effects that you're able to do with this. Out of the box at a minimum, this could target the Cascade that Zoldyck does when you have it fire off. So for 1 extra mana, you could get Cascade.
Bro.
Mm-hmm. You could also... it can't hit mana abilities, but any sources from like artifacts that allow you to do stuff like make creatures or draw cards or target other things to either be destroyed or things of that nature. Our Obtruse Archaic is able to copy those as well. Lands are colorless. So
That they are.
Again, you can't duplicate mana production, but if you're doing activated abilities into lands that do things for you in play, you are able to copy those. Like, you wouldn't have it in this deck, but things like Myriad Landscape and Fetch Lands and Evolving Wilds and token creating lands, things like that. Those are abilities that you can copy. Enter the battlefield triggers from artifact things like Solemn Simulacrum or other artifacts that enter the battlefield and do silly
Meteor
things.
Golem.
Meteor Golem.
I hate Meteor Golem so much. I hate that card.
Why?
It's 7 mana.
Sidebar. Why? 7 mana?
Sidebar is every time I've cast it, I've been like, I spent 7 mana to destroy one thing.
It is probably one of the worst feelings ever.
Of note, you've got Eldrazi in this deck that have Annihilator. That's a trigger you can copy.
That's immediately where my brain went. That Flare of Loyalties.
Yep.
Rough. Absolutely rough.
Oblivion Sower also comes in the deck as well. That's a copy trigger. That's a trigger you can copy as well. So just like, there's lots of utility purposes for being able to duplicate a thing like that. It's like, it's not as versatile as a Strionic Resonator, since Resonator could hit any trigger you control from any source. But being on a
one cheaper. It's
yeah,
one
it is
mana,
one
so
cheap.
two.
It is on one cheaper, and it comes on a blocker. That's pretty good to me. I think it's a very strong card in this deck.
Me too.
Nice.
Joseph, you want to take Desecrate Reality?
Sure. So it's 7 mana instant for each opponent. Exile up to 1 target opponent. Or sorry.
You just exile your opponents? Wow.
Sorry. Desecrate Reality. 7 mana instant for each opponent. Exile up to 1 target permanent that player controls with an even mana value. 0 is even. And then Adamant, if at least 3 colorless mana was spent to cast this spell, you return a permanent card with an odd mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's fine. I'm not super excited about that. It conditionally removes a couple of things, but also, like, do you know what else costs 7 mana? Meteor Golem. This is what you could be doing for 7 mana, but instead you're out here playing Meteor Golem.
Meteor Golem can't hit lands, though. This can.
It's true. It can hit lands, but if you're exiling your opponent's lands on like turn 7 or whatever this is, you should find something better to do.
Yeah,
again, though, that's what the colorless ramp aspect of this is, though. Like, this is something you could be either casting or cascading into as early as turn 5 or 6.
Yes, Cascade, though, you would not get the Adamant trigger for it.
Correct,
so
but
you would only exile a couple things.
Right. You would still... I don't know. It still seems very, very strong.
Yes.
Colorless removal is just something that's always sought after for colorless decks anyway. Your options are very limited.
I think if I'm comparing this to other, like, Farewell exists, which is just like,
you're
if
not
I'm
playing this in
comparing
any deck that isn't colorless.
Yeah, this card actually is really bad in my opinion, but in a colorless deck that just is like dying for removal, like,
yeah, I'd probably be cutting this card pretty quickly from this deck.
The fact that it only hits even mana value stuff,
you're just going to miss a lot of things.
For 7 mana, they could just say exile target permanent that for every opponent you can just exile something they have. Like,
well, that's just All Is Dust, which is also in the deck.
True. So
is there like a lore? Is there a lore reason that it can only hit even stuff? John?
There was an Eldrazi that dealt with even and odd permanents. So I'm sure this is based around them.
Yes,
Gotcha.
this is an Eldrazi card. If you notice on the artwork, there's all the Hedrons on it. This is on Zendikar. It's actually Emrakul in the background there specifically. It's kind of consuming the landscape.
Gotcha.
We already touched on Darksteel Monolith. 8 mana, indestructible artifact. Once each turn, you can pay 0 rather than the mana cost for a colorless spell in your hand. So it's sort of like, not Omniscience, but what's the one with Urza on it that came out pretty recently? It's a worse version of Omniscience, but it's a colorless Omniscience.
Oh,
once per turn.
crap. I know what you're talking about. I play against it on Arena a lot.
Anchor to Reality? Or is that the Scry one?
Behold the Multiverse? Is it?
Yes, it's Behold the Multiverse.
Yes.
So that's fine. It's really good in this deck. You wouldn't want to play it anywhere else. That seems the way for a lot of these cards. Like there's the ramp package in here is transferable, but the rest of these cards, like you can't really play these anywhere else.
Not
right.
really.
Part
Like,
of why
why
I'm not a huge fan of it. Like it's not really versatile. Like it does the thing that it does, and this deck kind of stays together, which I love morphing decks and shifting them and destroying them and rebuilding them and all this. And it's just kind of is pretty linear. But Jared, hit us with Calamity of the Titans.
So it's a 4 colorless sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, reveal a colorless creature card from your hand. And in this deck, that shouldn't be that hard to do. Exile each creature and planeswalker with mana value less than the revealed card's mana value. So this card is really awesome. Notably, it's 1 less mana than Desecrate Reality. And it's just better because it can be a one-sided board wipe. Like if you have a bunch, like the CMC, the curve of this deck is crazy. Like there are like 10 or 12 cards in here that are all above 6 CMC. And
right.
So you could just reveal something like that and hit everyone else's stuff, because that's a lot of decks start capping out their CMC at like 5 and 6. They might have 1 or 2 cards on the field that are worth more than that, but you're going to hit most of everything else your opponents are doing, and you're going to leave your most powerful stuff on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're
Exile?
presumably going to
Exile.
try and cast this before you get to those bigger ones. So like this doesn't. It would suck if this was a tempo swing where it was like, oh, I can either cast this or cast the thing that I was going to be revealing. But like, it's great. It is also a really great card to cascade into because it costs 6. So like your 7 gets cascade, and then you can just get this for free, exile everything, and then your original creature comes in.
Yeah,
it's untouched by it.
This card is actually great. Yeah, super sick.
Like that a lot.
Kind of
John,
like what you're saying, though. It definitely doesn't get put anywhere that's not a colorless deck.
John, flay
Right.
my loyalties real quick.
Yeah, I'd love to. Who loves 10 mana active treasons?
Me.
We're in for it. Flayer of Loyalties.
Definitely me.
Yeah, Flayer of Loyalties is 8 colorless for a 10/10 Eldrazi. When you cast this spell, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. Until end of turn, it has base power and toughness 10/10, gains Trample, Annihilator 2, and Haste. And then Flayer of Loyalties itself has Annihilator 2 and Trample.
Flames.
It's so good. It's so good. Annihilator is one of those abilities that everyone loves to hate, you know, like sacrificing permanents, right? You now have to make them choose between either the stuff they have in play or lands. And since colorless is inherently quite bad at dealing with permanents in play, once they start resolving, you know, you have to have other means to be able to control the board. And stuff like Calamity of the Titans, All is Dust, Desecrate Reality, Flayer of Loyalties, and the other Eldrazi that come in this deck that have exile triggers or annihilator triggers. That is colorless's way to remove permanents. You don't get the choices in those matters, but if you start stacking those abilities forward, that's how you keep the board clear for your big dumb idiots to get through.
I think we all probably have a memory from the first time we had to deal with an annihilator trigger pointed at us.
You're just like, you can do that?
Yeah. I had
it's very fun.
God, I was like at Boy Scout camp and somebody had like an Eldrazi deck and it just was the worst. I just didn't know cards like that even existed. It's like, oh my God, I was like 14. And then I had Annihilator 6 total. It was like 2 different Eldrazi. I don't remember what they were, but I was just like, wow, that's my whole board.
There
Most
goes.
of my lands. They're all gone. Anyway, that it's like the opposite of fond memory. Is that trauma?
I think that's trauma, Jared.
Yeah, I've been traumatized
I think
by
you've
Eldrazi.
just invented trauma.
The Eldrazi will do that to you.
That's the title of this episode. Get traumatized.
All right. How many? That's the end of the new cards.
Correct.
Yes.
That's great. So as far as the deck goes, something I'm noticing is there's no card draw in it outside of like Kozilek the Great Distortion, which is that's a really good card draw spell and one of the really good reprints in this deck.
Yes.
It is the cheapest of the Titans, so it does suck. It feels a little bit like a slap in the face. It's like, hey, we're going to give you the Titan in this deck that you could get the easiest.
You can sack your Mind Stone to draw some cards.
Jared,
It's so. I mean, yeah, it's the cheapest one, but I think, and this could probably be objective. I think Kozilek the Great Distortion is the best colorless commander to play. Period.
it's strong. Yeah.
I think this is way back in the command zone, but I think there was an episode where Ashlyn played Kozilek as her commander.
Yeah, I
she
actually
won.
think I would swap out Zul'Adok to be in the 99 and play Kozilek as the commander. Because what's going to happen is you're going to ramp and then you're going to have no cards in hand. So then you're going to, if you draw a Kozilek, that's amazing. But in almost every game you want to have Kozilek, you could give or take the Cascade. Like, that's cool when it happens. But like, I don't think I care about that being in the command zone. What I do care about is making sure that I have a full hand in the command zone. So I would recommend swapping Zul'Adok for Kozilek.
Right.
That's my analysis.
Cascade has an initial problem as well, is just because of how high variance it is. Even when you are doing the cool things, like, oh, fantastic! I turned my 8 mana Eldrazi into Soul Ring Mindstone.
Yeah. Now what?
Or if it works the other direction, oh, I've turned an 8 mana thing to get 2 other 6 big drops. Now I'm the archenemy.
Yes.
Yep.
One of
You
the
know what I
coolest
mean?
card draw spells, though, is War Room as land in this,
Yeah,
which is
that's so good.
It's a land that taps for colorless, or you can pay 3 and tap it to pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity to draw a card. So it's just 3 tap, draw a card. Same with Bonder's Enclave. 3, it's another land that taps for a colorless, or 3 tap, draw a card, activate only if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which you will. So
Also,
I'd
the
I'd
Tron
like to point-
lands are in here.
yes, the Tron lands are here.
lands are in here with no way to find them.
True.
That's real silly.
Notable.
That was so mean of them.
I'd like to point special note to Forsaken Monument as easily one of the best colorless mana, one of the best payoffs for
this
playing
is colorless Mirari's Wake.
It is. It's phenomenal. Colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, add an additional colorless, and when you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life.
Yep.
Just easily one of the best things you could find in the deck to get down super early. This helps accelerate your game plan. It doesn't give you cards, but everything else your deck wants to do, perfect. Keeps you alive, keeps you ramped.
It gives Kozilek 2/2.
Yes, because the Eldrazi need
He
2
needs
extra points
it.
of power.
He needs it.
I love that they included Thran Dynamo and Worn Power Stone in this deck, because I don't think it functions without those. But like Thran Dynamo on turn 4 gets you from turn 4 to turn 7. So like turn 5, you've got 8 mana available to you to play. Oh, Kozilek. Well, he costs 10. Just kidding. But this, if you've never landed a Thran Dynamo and untapped with it, you haven't experienced true Magic, I don't think. Like, it's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that card's good, and it becomes even better in this colorless deck because you don't care that it's just colorless mana. It's
100%.
really good here. Yeah,
I see your friend Stone Coil Serpent's in here too.
You know I love me Stone Coil Serpent. Actually, there's so many of my budget brewery recommendations because there's a Blast Zone in here as well.
No way.
Looks like Wizards has been listening to the MTG Thoughtcast.
Dude, they're taking our input. They're taking our input. That's sick. Mirage Mirror is sick.
It is.
Very cool card.
I love Mirage
Oh,
Mirror.
you know, it'd be really easy to slot into this deck is Dark Depths and Thespian Stage.
Yeah.
Mirage Mirror becomes an additional way to make Merilage. Anyway, that's not in the deck, but that's what you should put in the deck.
Yes, you
Exactly.
definitely should do that.
I feel like all the creatures are good. Like they're all big, dumb, colorless creatures. They've succeeded. Steel Hellkite will win games. Soul of New Phyrexia will win games. What is this Phyrexian Triniform?
That's from the original Commander Legends. It's kind of like it's like a new version of Wormcoil Engine, who is not in this deck.
Oh yeah, notably Wormcoil Engine's not in the deck. That's weird.
That would be a very good include here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just
Eldrazi
reprinted that too many times.
Eldrazi cards I'd like to point out. We've already talked about All Is Dust. Artisan of Kozilek for some recursion.
Classic.
And Endbringer as repeatable card draw because it untaps during each turn. It That Betrays with some new artwork on him. Fantastic way to steal permanents off of player stuff. Not of This World, one of the best colorless counter spells you can use.
Counterspeller ability that targets a permanent you control is 7 mana. And it costs 7 to less if it targets a creature you control, power 7 or greater. So it could be a free counterspell.
Correct. It could be a free counterspell most of the time. Ugin the Ineffable is also in here as well to give colorless cost reduction and acts as pseudo card draw. Yeah. I don't know. Like, this deck seems like one of those good ones that, like, if you're looking to go into a trying the challenge of colorless specifically, if you could get this one at a reasonable price, this seems like a very good ground base to work with, right? If for no other reason, you've got 15 wastes in it as well. Colorless lands are very hard to come by now. So just having the amount that you need that isn't just a pile of cruddy utility lands, the fact that it has 15 wastes in it as well is very helpful. This could be a very good backbone strategy to begin either working towards going big, heavy artifact colorless ramp, or if you're trying to make Eldrazi tribal, because this has very good pieces in both directions.
Yes. It does only have 10 pieces of ramp in it, which I think is an issue. I think this needs to have some more ramp in here. Like,
especially because it's limited card draw as well.
Oh yeah. You need to have a hand that has like 2 or 3 pieces of ramp in it.
That's the challenge of playing colorless, though, is like it is a thing you can do, but you have to keep in mind that you're going to be restricted. Yes. The upside you get of not having to worry about mana color fixing, the downside comes with the amount of board interaction that you are able to do.
Also, I think that Howling Mine belongs in this deck.
Dude,
that's such an easy include that everybody is going to be grateful for at the table. That is going to just make sure that you're have consistent card draw every turn.
Temple Bell would be not terrible either.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
I would even be able to see an argument for Teferi's Puzzle Box too.
Oh gosh,
that would be fun. Put Psychosis Crawler in here. Now we're just playing colorless wheels.
No, please, God.
I love it.